Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Nacho Tuesday. And today I have Ayush here with Warp. And without further ado, we would love if you can introduce your company and what you guys do.
Yeah, my name is Ayush. I'm the founder and CEO of Warp. Warp is building an AI native employee management platform for ambitious companies. We help companies, especially startups and high growth companies, simplify their employee onboarding, paying them, so payroll, complying with all the tax jurisdictions, so all the payroll related tax compliance, benefits, and a lot more.
Great. Seeing how your platform's built for fast growing startups, how do you see HR, payroll, and compliance changing over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think one big shift that has happened here is this. You're seeing this play out in a lot of other fields right now very quickly, but I think HR and payroll, not enough people have realized that this is also going to happen. And that's like the one sort of big contrarian belief that we have at Warp. So the meta trend here, the broader trend is that so much of manual work is being automated using LLMs and AIs. So a great example of that would be something like Harvey that has raised, I think now most recently at like almost $8 billion as of late, to give legal teams superpowers for reviewing documents, building legal contracts, getting back quickly, and just being more productive. I think we will see similar trends happening in HR and payroll, where I think the future founders and ops teams and finance leaders will spend way less of their time dealing with repetitive, manual, tedious tasks like paperwork, reviewing common basic things like their tax IDs with various government accounts and whatnot. And way more of their time on important strategic things like where should their company be going, how should they improve and manage their culture and things like that. And that's what's I think it's almost starting to happen, and we're here to kind of accelerate that. But I think it'll be big.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, given that a lot of founders do want to work on the actual product and the stuff that they specialize in. So I
Yeah.
understand that you were passionate about building products as well. Do you have kind of a product development background?
Yeah. So my quick background is I studied computer science and physics and math at MIT. I ended up doing an undergrad and a master, so I spent about 5 years in Cambridge. And specialized in large-scale machine learning systems and distributed systems back at with basically kind of doing a lot of research work in that direction as well. And so what's interesting about, I guess, that background is I think I'm an engineer first and then a product person right after. But that combination has been what's, I think, has allowed us to kind of build very quickly one of the best products in this like really massive, old, somewhat incumbent-led space, to the point that users and like customers are overwhelmingly loving the product and giving us great feedback. And we've seen that kind of incredible growth. I mean, we've raised about 25 million total in just under 2 years from starting the company. Have hundreds of ambitious, fast-growing startups, including folks like Blind AI, Reducto, Paraform, and many more. And I think it all comes back down to being able to take a unique product and engineering-led approach to a space that's largely been dominated by these sales-led, very distribution-focused companies like the big sort of names in the space. So that's how I operate. Yeah.
Yeah, the dinosaurs, and you could definitely leverage, newer technologies too to really, beat them to market or come up with new features really quickly and iterate. How do you see AI playing into product development these days?
Yeah, it's such a great question because I feel like something shifted meaningfully in the last 2 years of even just like being the CEO, right? Like I think it used to be the case that if you were a very engineering oriented technical founder and you were the CEO of a company, you would almost like it'd be a little bit of a sad decision, but necessary one to step out of like coding and developing and building things day to day. So you sort of go a little bit more high level at the company, and that's what's required. That's what's very important, of course, right? Setting the company strategy, hiring people, aligning them into a vision, and so on and so forth. But I think what's amazing about building products today is that, a person like me who is a very engineering sort of like at its heart kind of CEO, you can fire up Cursor or Claude Code or whatever your favorite choice of AI coding editor is. You can ask it questions, first of all, like, we have a really vast code base because we built a lot of product very quickly. So it would have been kind of impossible to just go in and try to understand cold all the moving parts. But what's great about tools like Cursor and Cloud Code is you can just go and ask it a question of like how a certain portion of the feature or the code base of the infra works, and then you can tweak it. You can make new products and just like make real contributions, actual PRs that get merged. So I do that all the time now. Like I code important, useful features all the time. And that's something that you just couldn't do as a CEO, I think, even maybe 2 years ago.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. You could just jump right in and roll up your sleeves and get to work on it. I guess, how do you evaluate features that you want to focus on? I know a lot of founders, they run into the struggle of trying to build too many features, and then their MVP gets totally messed up. What are your thoughts on like prioritizing features as you're building a product and bringing it to market?
Yeah, I think first is you have to really know what is the core unique thing you're trying to solve, first of all. And it's almost like you want to treat your first version of the product as a very directed experiment of sorts, right? It's like if you're running a scientific experiment, you have some kind of hypotheses about a problem, about a need, about a important thing that you could solve for a specific user. So for us, we started out by noticing that early stage founders were spending way too much of their time dealing and figuring out all the nuanced like tax withholding, unemployment, and insurance requirements in various jurisdictions. Like if you start a company in California, it's you got to be dealing with like and I think for us, we started with that insight. So the first version of the product we built was very simple, right? Like you can hire somebody and we will automate the underlying tax compliance work that needs to happen in those jurisdictions. I think early on we were primarily concentrated and focused on like California and New York as like the big spots. I don't know, if you give me 1 second, I'm just gonna close this for the light.
Yep, no worries.
There we go. Okay, better. And that's pre-PMF, that's the version 1. And it's equally important that as you start to grow as a company, and this is a mindset shift that we've had to make recently, as I think we've tripled headcount in the last year, we've grown revenue, quadrupled the revenue, and are on track to be processing like billions of dollars within the next year or so. It's, you kind of have to change your mindset on like, okay, we're going to be very, very like precise with the product to like being comfortable with juggling more moving parts in your product. That's like invariably you will run to a greater degree of complexity. And it's important to recognize when you've crossed that sort of boundary in your company and product journey. And then you sort of have to, even then you have to be very like, say no to most of the things, and then focus on the most important big problems, because guess what, like you only have so much time, so much bandwidth, so much energy. And so it's better to apply that towards like the really big important things you could solve and build, as opposed to like the tiny things that just like keep coming up and you think it's important and productive to like get, just like close out those tasks. But it's actually more important to like take a step back and be like, what are the top 2-3 most important things we could work on, and that will make a real difference.
Yeah, I see that a lot too. A lot of founders get focused on like a feature that they want to ship, or maybe a customer, like a specific customer has a request for a feature, but that's just that one customer, and they fail to really evaluate if that feature is actually something that their entire ICP actually wants.
Yeah, totally.
Nice. So so you built Warp from the ground up. What are the biggest misconceptions about payroll compliance that you've seen along your journey, working with startups with an early MVP and then kind of growing from there?
I think it's funny. One of the biggest misconceptions, I think it's the fact that people think that, I mean, there's lots of like legacy incumbents in this space, and as a result, people think that this would be and should be a solved problem. and that you sort of believe that until you try starting a company and grow quickly, and then you realize just like how much manual work is actually just handed over back to the employer, back to the founders, back to the finance or ops or legal team. And to me, like I worked at a startup and in kind of handling some of that myself until and that was kind of like my personal brush at this space, and it's like just realizing how janky the existing tooling is, and it inspired us to like build something really amazing here, and that's Warp today. But I'd argue like that's like the biggest misconception for a lot of folks who haven't really gotten into their hands into like what it takes to scale a company, is they sort of think that this would be a solved problem. But the reality is it's almost like most software is like a nice, maybe like a UI layer on top of manual work. And what we are building at Warp is not the UI layer that sits on top of manual work, but the software and AI native platform that eliminates that underlying complexity in manual work. And that's what's, I think, really exciting for us.
Yeah, so that's one of your key value proposition is the automation aspect. Where do you see AI playing a role going forward for your company and your product as you grow?
Yeah, there's lots of areas, and we kind of have to be focused on like where the most important problems are and which ones we're going to tackle in what order, right? So I think, as I was mentioning, when we started, the one big thing was building out like an AI LLM driven compliance tax engine that can go understand requirements around like hundreds of tax jurisdictions, and go and automate all these like really manual janky filings that humans were making by hand. And I think that's still an important area for us, but we see really amazing, like interesting opportunities. Like we are, especially now that our customers are like continuing to grow with us, we have seen folks go from something like 5 people, very super early stage startup, to like 50 plus in like 10 months. We have these companies that are growing very, very quickly, and we want to kind of understand what they will need 6 months, 12 months from now from us, and be ahead of those requirements. And so all sorts of like interesting problems start to emerge as you scale a company quickly. And we see that there's so much like manual work that humans are still having to do. An example of that would be just like reconciling and understanding differences between various payroll amounts from cycle to cycle. So let's say if you have a 1,000-person company with people on like bonuses, commission structures, reimbursements, and paid time off, and deductions and things like that, things constantly change. And what ends up happening at those companies is that they'll have like a human sort of expert going in, reviewing those changes, double, triple checking them in like literally an Excel sheet sometime. And that's hours and hours of work wasted actually twice a month. Usually these companies are running semi-monthly payroll, so it's going to be twice a month. And we can come in, we can just like eliminate that work by at least 80-90%, right? We can have an LLM review all the discrepancies from the last cycle, explain them in like human terms of why something changed. Why is my net pay higher this month compared to the last cycle? Well, turns out, your commission was calculated in this way, and that's what's leading to it, and so on, right? And we can just self-serve that to those employees, so they don't ask the HR manager or the finance leader in the company, like, why is this happening? They don't have to keep spending time answering those repetitive questions. And we just see that kind of automation opportunity across the entire like employee management space.
Yep. Yeah, that could really clog things up if you have them asking every paycheck how that was calculated.
Yeah.
Nice. So from your vantage point, what's next for payroll beyond just paying people?
So it's interesting because when we started Warp about 2 years ago, we were simply doing like employee onboarding, so you could hire somebody and then you could pay them. In that time, I think we have shipped at such an incredible velocity that I think we've sort of leapfrogged many existing products, like companies that have existed for like 10 plus years. And we are now truly like one of the fastest sort of evolving product in this space that's been dominated by these companies that have existed for like multiple decades in many cases. So what we do today is we do payroll for all US employees across all 50 states. We do US based contractors, whether they're individual or a business contractor. We also handle global payroll for global contractors anywhere that they're based in whatever country. Then we do all the HRIS stuff, which is employee onboarding, documentation, personal identification documents, I-9s, offer letters, NDAs. We make that really easy and simple for storing, reviewing, and calculating in these places. We handle all the underlying federal, state, local tax compliance automatically behind the scenes for these fast-growing companies, no matter where their footprints are. And we also do benefits, so healthcare, 401k, people's medical, dental, vision insurance. We have a product for employees to be able to upload and just like take a picture of a receipt or an expense and the employer to pay that out automatically. We have a really powerful company calendar and PTO and time tracking engine that we recently built and shipped. So all that to say, I think we actually do quite a lot of things already. And we have built that faster than ever in this space in compared to any company that has ever attempted to do this. But we're still very excited about doing like solving more problems in this space. And I think part of a big portion of that is motivated by our customers who genuinely just like keep asking us to solve more problems for them. It's a fortunate position to be in, right? Like when customers just kind of like violently using the product, even if it's like somewhat like missing pieces, and they'll come and tell you every single day. And so we love that from our folks. But other things that we will do likely, I'm not sure if I can tell specifics of the product releases because I'd rather sort of like build it out, announce it for the world. So you'll hear about it. But maybe the general direction for us is we are building the definitive AI native employee management platform for ambitious companies. And that to us boils down to solving all the interlocking pieces of puzzles and problems when it comes to running and scaling a high growth company with employees everywhere, with policies that need to apply and that need to be complicated and complex, but also easy to use, hopefully, and understand. And so that problem space is vast and where our attention is towards as we look about 2026.
Very nice. I guess for early stage startups, for anybody that watches this video, what's one tip for you that you would offer them to avoid from day one that you see a lot of people make with their HR and payroll that tends to bite later on?
Oh yeah, I can give many examples, but I'll try to give maybe one or two super tactical ones. One is that you should, if you're ever thinking about changing the name of your legal entity, my advice is don't. And the reason for that, like I made this like tweet once, and it was like, if I could like grab every founder and just like tell them in their face, like, do not change your legal name of your entity, because actually what happens is you think you'll change. It will takes a long time. It's very time consuming. And once you do it, like there's all these like IRS and all these like government databases and like KYB databases that have your old name. So anytime you go out and try to get a bank account or like anything that effectively checks the validity, legitimacy of your business, it will always flag you. And that will continue to happen for like 2 years after you think you changed the name successfully. And it will always like consume extra time. And there's a much simpler solution if you're thinking about like, why do people try to change their name? Because they are trying to pivot into a new product or like a new product line or whatever. The reality is you can just use what's called a DBA, which is doing business as. We actually have a legal entity, and then our DBA is VORP, right? And so it's just a much cleaner way. You will not run into any of those hairy problems around like KYB and trying to get a bank account and getting flagged and having to do a bunch of work. So that's my one big advice, very tactical. And the other more broader thing is that I think early on, people don't think enough about what's going to be a platform that will scale with them as they continue to grow. I think most startups, look, if you're an ambitious founder, ambitious startup, you should think about your company as what happens in the success case. I think a lot of founders think about like they hedge their company by thinking like, what's cheaper, or what's like what will work for me today and 3 months from now or 6 months from now, and they don't think enough long term. But I think the best founders are thinking long term. That's what I've noticed in like the best founders. They're thinking longer term. They're thinking about what happens if they win. And I think some of the reason that I think in some ways we have some of the fastest growing companies of today using Warp is those are the kinds of founders that saw that early on and wanted a platform that could do and solve all these problems for them and will continue to scale as they grow. So I think I would encourage more folks to think a little bit longer term and put some thought into that. And it's almost like if you are okay with putting up with like somewhat subpar tools, I think it also kind of impacts like how you think about building your own company, your own product. I think great products inspire builders to build great things, and subpar products subconsciously kind of tell you that it's okay if something doesn't quite work quite the right way.
Yeah, it's okay to have a big vision and kind of work backwards from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've received like a wire, for instance, from some company, and I'm like, wait, whose company is this, right? The company I'm interacting with has a really marketable name, but their actual company name that they send the wire with is, whatever they started with, which, for me, I don't really care as long as I get paid, right? But yeah, DBA is definitely the hack there if you want to if you want to change how you present yourself to the outside world without having to change all the filings and everything for your company. With that said, what kind of regulatory changes are you tracking in the US or globally that might cause some changes for companies that they should be aware of?
Yeah, I think I'll give one internal and one external answer. And so one internal answer is that we are in this like fun, interesting moment in history where for the first time, LLMs and AIs are using software, using tools like a human does. So they can go in and start browsing websites, parse information like a human would, click around things, fill out forms. I think we've seen the rise of like browser agents, like, of course, the company called BrowserBase. We've seen, I think, Atlas or OpenAI's, and then Perplexity's Comet. And so it's going to be interesting to see like if there's going to be some evolution from the government agencies on how they feel about that, because it's not clear right now. I think there's no real clarity right now, but I suspect what's going to happen is as long as there's like a compliant use case and real use case that helps both the businesses, the customers, as well as the government agencies to like make fewer mistakes, spend fewer man hours trying to like fix mistakes, which is a lot of time for these agencies is spent just like fixing mistakes. And why do these mistakes happen? Is because some human forgot to do something. So I think we are at Warp. I mean, we've seen just like how much compliance burden you can eliminate if you just set up things the right way and you have a real like software and LLM system taking care of it for businesses. And I think it will just be interesting to we're internally monitoring how that will evolve over the next few years from these agencies as they realize that more and more like LLMs are using the websites, the forums, the government like portals that they originally designed for humans. So that's one internal one. One external one is I think it's there's some interesting trends in like benefits and healthcare space on how employers are thinking through providing great benefits to companies, to their employees. And there's a ton of like new companies that have come up. So we kind of we track this internally because we give people like medical, dental, vision, 401k. So we're interested in that from that perspective. But it does seem interesting. I think in newer companies, especially startups, they are starting to use things like giving like gym passes or class membership and class pass and things like that. That's considered a meaningful enough like employee health benefit almost. And especially if you have a younger, healthier like employee group, which a lot of like startups and early stage companies do, as opposed to like spending and continuing to spend so much money on like insurance, healthcare, which is obviously, you know, the story there, how the costs just keep rising and rising, and it's almost like there's been a clear direct upward rise in those. So that's one external thing. I think people we're seeing more employers and companies thinking about benefits in a more sort of like holistic way than just like you get medical, dental, vision, and then it's done.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point that you made there. Actually, I'm really interested in what you think are some of the top benefits that a lot of employees look for these days. Like, if you're a startup and you're trying to attract early talent, what are some of the key benefits that you could leverage in order to get people interested in your company? I know remote work's kind of a popular one, especially for startups that don't want to spend money on the commercial space.
Yeah. So I have one sort of like counterintuitive answer for this, which is I think more startups should invest and take very seriously their office space. And I think this is something that many early stage companies don't think about enough. I mean, I'm sitting in an office of, in our office right now with the entire team, just over that way. And we get complimented anytime, someone from the outside comes in and here for meeting us or anything. It's like, wow, it's like one of the best offices I've been in New York. And there's a reason for that, right? Like we were very intentional. I was very intentional when we were looking for this new space that we moved in a couple of months ago. It was certainly not the cheapest option, right? But I think it's really important to have a space where you and your team feels motivated and inspired to come in. Like for us, we're 5 days a week in person. We're a in-person culture by default. And so it was really important that we had a place where you come in and you feel great, right? You look forward to coming in, as opposed to some like dimly lit white box where it just feels janky. We have lots of these like natural trees like in the background throughout the office. So I think that's my one counterintuitive answer is I think most startups don't take their office space seriously enough. They should. It's almost always worth spending a little bit more getting the great space. And then like maybe more tactical answer there, more direct answer is I think that if you are primarily an in-person company and you're asking people to come in, one thing that goes is really great to give to employees is like commuter benefits, which it's like a feature we shipped with Warp some months ago, and I've seen great adoption. Like we made it really easy to build like commuter benefit policy so you can apply it to the people that are working in office in person and exclude the people that are maybe remote, and then those people get automatically paid out some pre-tax amount. It's basically tax-free money. There's no reason not to do it. The employee can contribute it on their own and it gets automatically paid out when it's relevant. So I think maybe I think people should try and use that if you're an in-person culture and want to incentivize people and make them feel good about coming into office every day.
And it builds a better camaraderie with all the team members and everything too, which is sometimes hard to do just doing video calls all the time.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So I guess what's next for Warp? Where do you see the company in 5 years from now? Talking about big vision here.
Yeah. So I think if Warp succeeds really in a massive way, like what I would consider the criteria for that is we have built the definitive AI native enduring platform where great companies and great businesses run all of their company and people operations. That's a success criteria for us, right? Like not some fundraising milestone or like even maybe like revenue
Those stories
milestone.
Usually don't end well.
It's the mission that we are driving towards every day of building that definitive platform. I think we believe that it will be built by people who really care about the product experience and are very engineering oriented, as opposed to like sales or distribution led people, which is a lot of other companies in this space. And if we do that, I think we will free up the most important human hours from some of the best people in the world to be spent towards solving big, ambitious, innovative problems and building cool, interesting things for the world, as opposed to dealing with tedious compliance work and paperwork and all these things that I think can and should be automated. And that's a big mission for us. I think people think that sometimes, like it's funny. Like sometimes people think it's like, oh, you're just building B2B SaaS, right? And like the reality is, it's businesses are the heart and engine of innovation, right? And so anything you can do to improve the efficiency and the speed and velocity and give like superpowers to like entrepreneurs and founders and people who are building real things, that's really worth it. Like that could be the difference between the next like SpaceX, the next Tesla, the next Elon, building something great versus like, I don't know, drowning in like bullshit work and whatnot.
Drowning in paperwork, as I say.
Yeah. And so we take that very seriously, and that's the mission we're driving towards. And we're excited about it. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a great vision over there with a guy that actually knows how to build a good product. So where can people learn more about Warp and pick up your product today?
Yeah, so if you're interested, I mean, we are first off hiring engineers, product and design people like crazy. We've tripled headcount this year. We'll likely 2 to 3x again in 2026. So if you're a great engineer or product or design person, you can just directly email me, ayush@joinwarp.com. And I'll happily reply. I try to read everything and reply to the ones that are interesting. And also, we are at joinwarp.com. You can check out our product and come talk to me or anyone else on the team if you'd like a demo of the product, and we're happy to show you. Especially if you're a fast-growing company or a startup or a business owner that's dealing with any of the compliance pains. We're going into the year end, and so that tends to be the best time for thinking about making a switch. So let us know.
Yep, jump on it. It's joinwarp.com. That's WARP, everybody. And also you can pick it up in the NachoNacho B2B SaaS and AI marketplace. We always have the best brands. Hence why we have you guys on our platform as well too. So very excited to see where you guys take your company. It's been some very exciting growth for you guys. And it sounds like you're solving a big problem, and you still got a bigger vision you got to appeal to here pretty soon. So you guys are doing really well. And glad to be partners with you guys.
Love it. Yeah. Appreciate our partnership. Andy, pleasure chatting. Take care.
Likewise. You too. Bye.